Clayton, mate, thanks for talking to us. We're talking esports. We're talking all things esports. We're talking listed funds, unlisted funds, investing into esports. World's changed. Mate, people are no longer going to the football. They're no longer going to watch a game on television at your mate's barbecue. They're sitting there watching people play games. Mate, walk us through it.
Okay, this is a fundamental cultural shift. I come from a traditional sports background. I'd go around and have a barbecue at a mate's place and watch the footy. Now it's younger people that I work with are going around to watch a game of Fortnite, or going around to watch, a simulated esports game. The world is fundamentally changing forever, the way people are interacting.
Clayton, look, just give me a sense of what it's like in Australia versus the rest of the world. Has Australia stepped up and taken an interest in esports, or is it still a relatively unknown?
I think Australia is a bit far behind in our education around esports. Last year, a new ETF came to the market by Van Eck, ESPO, which I actually use throughout some of my portfolios. This gives exposure to 25 of the top names around the world. Now, this is important because I feel that Australia is a little bit far behind on esports, but overseas is why you have to be global in the listed space. Now, there's a huge amount of money that's getting pumped into companies around the world. There's acquisitions going everywhere, and that sort of led me down the path about why I saw a niche into setting up a global active esports fund.
Well, you're a couple of years into it. What have you raised? What are you doing? Where are you investing? Are you investing both domestically and internationally?
Just internationally at the moment. There's nothing here onshore in Australia that I like at the moment, and nothing big enough. So based on that too, it's such a new industry, esports and gaming. There are ETFs that have come to market, but very few active funds. People have asked me, what's the difference between an ETF fund and an active fund? The difference is they have a set parameter around their portfolio. You have to have 50% of your revenue has to come from gaming to make their index. And with an index, they have 25 names, set parameters in this. Now, what I'm going to try and explain here is that my global fund has the ability to go long and short. So coming into last month, we saw a big tech sell-off in the NASDAQ. We saw companies report. We saw Activision, Blizzard, we saw Take-Two, we saw some smaller companies that are coming out of Germany and France, all reporting into numbers. I took long and some short positions in that. So you've got to be active in this space because there's a lot of acquisitions happening. EA Sports has $4 billion in money on their balance sheet right now to buy companies. Nintendo has $16 billion. You think they're not building up a cash war chest to buy things? I need to be active in that.
Tell me about being active. Because let's face it, it doesn't matter what market you play in. Esports, clearly, in this particular fund that you own, you've got 3 or 4 others.
Yep.
But esports, it's an ever-changing play. There are a lot of inputs.
Exactly, and that's, with such a growth industry, a lot of the valuations get thrown out the door. The PE multiples, earnings and prices, this is a growth, not a fundamental portfolio. Looking at different sectors, like, it's not only the game owners, the Tencent, but also the software owners. Who owns the hardware? Who owns the cloud devices?
Who owns the pipe?
Who owns the pipe, exactly. So there's obviously the big players like Tencent who are just going after everything, but there are some other big players in there like Corsair Games, NetEase. These guys are owning the software, and through my connections in esports, I talk to gamers a lot, finding out from them, what are you guys using? What is going on in the market right now? That is the key piece that I spend a lot of time talking to companies, talking to the young generation. What's cool at the moment? What's not? What's the latest? What's working with your products and what's not? That's the difference.
Paint me a picture. Where do you see it going?
Look, obviously there are big numbers out there that Morgan Stanley's and JP Morgan put out that there was $150 million in revenue that esports created last year. Predictions are by 2023 it'll be a $200 billion industry. But I think there's going to be a fundamental shift this year and the next into having some big traditional esports teams moving into esports like Manchester United, FIFA, Gridiron. Traditional sports are starting to move into esports, and I feel that players, these younger gamers who are so smart to run they mightn't be as athletic as the traditional gamers, but very different in the mind. So these guys have to be respected for their own skills. this is definitely going to go down the same path that, like, on Twitch, okay? Twitch is owned by Amazon, where people get on there and game in FIFA or Fortnite, whatever they do. People go on there and scout, try and look for players to join their teams, just like normal sports, just like I'm playing down.
So you're saying I'm playing a game, we're networked, there's people cruising around, you've got scouts watching a bunch of different games saying, hey, I want that guy for that team, and hey, we're going to enter that contest.
Exactly. I have a few friends of mine who were on Twitch here in Sydney who got picked up by some scouts over in LA. Come over to LA and join our team and join a house full of gamers for a couple of months to see how you go and try out for the team. Paid some serious amounts of money to move over there and to play in these sports and then get sponsorship. People come and say, hey, will you use my game? Will you use my console? Just like, hey, will you wear my sneakers?
Okay, so what we're seeing here is, I mean, if we think back over the last 20, 30 years, major primary media, major television, radio, print, all geared up around programmatic opportunities, whether that be sports or other. What we're really saying here is we've got a new form of entertainment that we can actually really seriously look at from a marketing and communications activity to a very specific demographic of people.
Absolutely, and that's like the other night I was on Twitch watching some gamers play, and just on a young kid playing Fortnite, 21 million people watching him, 21 million people watching this guy play. And that blew me away. But I'm creating a message trying to educate people to say this is
what I'm hearing is that esports is investable under the right set of circumstances.
Yeah, it sure is. We're seeing large amounts of money that come into this space, and there is obviously a large amount of money on the sidelines right now globally that is ready to invest in esports. But it's a leap of faith taking this, it's creating an esports fund, Australia's first esports fund, active fund, one of a few globally. People are like, oh, that's a bit of a risk, but I don't think it's a risk. I feel like this is a fundamental change in the world that's not going to go anywhere. These are serious athletes that are now having tens of millions of followers that watch them daily play these games. So just like traditional sporting backgrounds, this is a sector that is only going to go one way.
Well, look, fantastic for speaking to you this morning. Look forward to future conversations and building out the awareness, the education, and driving some of the transactional activity into funds like yours over the coming months.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me on.